In a Muslim quarter of a town in Qing, China, there is an old courtyard wall the color of overcast daylight. A hand run along it finds the seam, near the top, where the brick quietly changes. One extra course sits above the others, laid a little differently, as if the wall were finished once, then quietly asked to grow. Masons call a course like this a repair, a settling, a landlord's whim. But this one runs the whole yard, straight and deliberate, carrying no roof, no beam, nothing at all, except a question. Why would people in the middle 1600s add brick that holds up no weight? The answer is a direction. The wall was built to keep quiet, west, toward Mecca, where a Hui community turned to pray 5 times a day. Kept in the open, an unlicensed prayer hall could be reported, and the Qing magistrate was not fond of unregistered gatherings. So the wall grew, not to hold a roof, but to hide one, raising the sightline just enough. What it hid was a mosque built by hands that could not sign their names to it. Faith in practice, belief becoming daily life. To see how this one was kept, start with the wall, the seam, and the single extra course of brick. The first clue is a piece of paper, and the plainest object here hides the boldest choice. In a magistrate's office sits the permit for that courtyard, stamped by a clerk history remembers only as Old Way, a request for an ordinary wall at an ordinary height. On its face, nothing. A modest enclosure, the sort of thing a clerk stamps without looking up. But hold it against the wall itself, and the paper is short. The permit asked for less height than the finished structure carries, less than that extra course of brick would ever need. Someone wrote down a smaller building than the one they meant to keep. The gap between the 2 numbers is the first thing the town was not supposed to see. To read why that gap matters, one has to know what the builders were really raising behind it. Look at the worn threshold and the second door. This courtyard doubled as school, court, and guest house, not just a prayer hall. So the permit was not lying about a wall. It was hiding a courtyard that would run half the life of the block and calling it a fence. And once one number is seen bent to fit a story, the real size of the thing it hid starts to press for an answer. Now, turn from the paper to the wall itself. Not what it hides, but how it is made. Put a hand flat against the stone and you notice it is thick. Far thicker than a garden fence ever needs to be, laid course on course to a depth that could carry a roof, or the weight of a building it pretends not to be. A mason of that century could read that like a signature. A provincial fence went up thin and low, because a fence only has to stand, not to hold. This one is built like a load-bearing spine. Think of the minaret, the tower that carries the call to prayer across a town. Here, the logic runs in reverse. The same craft turned to keep a prayer hall unheard. The stone overrules the permit, because when stone and paper disagree, stone is the one that cannot lie. One does not build that thick to enclose a courtyard. One builds it to hold up a secret. So what was it built to hide? There is one more thing the street can't show you. It only appears if you climb. From the street, the courtyard reads as walls and a gate, nothing more. But go up to a neighboring roof at first light, look down across the tiled roofs, and a shape shows itself that the ground could never reveal. A low dome, set behind the wall and kept below its top line, so that from below the eye slides right past it. It was built to be seen from heaven and hidden from the road. To understand why that matters, one has to know what a roofline usually says out loud. Wherever a mosque stands, the prayer hall faces one city, Mecca. So every hall from this town to the sea points the same way. And that orientation usually rises to be counted. A proper silhouette climbs, announces itself, carries the call across a town. Here, every instinct of that craft was turned inside out, the dome made low, the announcement swallowed, the sightline given up on purpose. And a choice like that does not belong to a mason. A workman lays the course he is told to lay. He does not decide that a house of prayer must duck beneath its own wall. Someone with authority over the whole plan ordered the roofline set back, someone who knew exactly what a raised dome would summon and who chose to trade the reach of the building for the survival of it. And whoever it was had already guessed the harder truth. This hall was too woven into the block's daily life to ever be torn down. The fourth clue is not carved in stone or drawn on a permit. It is spoken out loud. In the Friday prayer, the sermon must name the reigning emperor aloud, a required line no hidden congregation could quietly drop. In a hall built to leave no trace, that one sentence was the most dangerous thing said inside it. Leave the required name out, and you hand a suspicious official the one thing he needs: open proof of defiance. Speak it, and you announce, week after week, that a place he never licensed is praying in his shadow. So the community did something bolder than hiding. It kept the sentence. The name was spoken plainly into a room the state did not know existed. Loyalty declared aloud by people whose survival depended on the state never looking too closely. They did not manage the danger by going silent. They managed it by hiding the walls and leaving the words in the open. The last clue is not a wall or a permit, but a door, a plain door in a rear alley, the kind an official never notices. For years it worked, until an inspector stopped and read the whole scheme in a glance. He said nothing and went home to no reward for it. So the real question is not how the trick worked, it is why, once it was seen, nothing came of it. To see why, look at who this mosque belonged to. This mosque leaned on the neighborhood's own money, not the crown's. So the building was the neighborhood in stone, its market, school, court. To tear it down was to tear down the district. The secret was not punished but shared. Even the ruler's name, spoken aloud week after week in that hidden hall, was never made to answer for itself. It simply became one more thing the neighborhood carried together. They built it to be indispensable, hiding it only long enough to outlast easy undoing. The cost was real, years beneath a false height, a door that could betray everyone the moment the wrong eye looked up. What it bought was a place that survived the fear of it. The inspector had looked up. The wall was still standing, which meant someone else had already decided what happened next, not the state, the neighborhood it was built for. Go back to that courtyard a generation on. The false height still stands, worn now, but hidden from no one. The wall bought time, and the community spent it becoming something no ruler could afford to erase. Follow the money. That same local money had a name: Waqf, a charitable trust, private wealth signed over to outlast any ruler's mood. It rested not on a permit someone could revoke, but on a neighborhood that had already paid. Its roots sunk past the reach of one angry official. But honesty owes the other half of the ledger. People lived years under a lie built with their own hands. Some died before the danger passed. Ask the ones who outlived it whether the wall was worth their fear, and they answer only for themselves, never for the next family to gamble. Belief gave the reason. Belonging gave the wall its weight. Not every family that hides something is ashamed of it. Some are only waiting for the day they no longer have to. The wall hid a mosque under a false height. What a whole people did with the years it bought is the harder thing to measure. The false wall is still standing, but the story of why is only half told. Go back one last time to the courtyard and lay a hand flat against the old gray wall. The scar in the plaster is still there, the seam where the false height meets the true one. But read it again. That ridge is not a flaw in the work. It is a decision, still legible after 2 centuries. It is the exact line where a neighborhood decided how tall it was allowed to look and how tall it meant to be. That is the strange thing about a good hiding place. The wall never saves anyone. It only buys the years. What survives is whatever too many ordinary lives lean on: the school, the fund that fed a widow, the court that settled a quarrel over bread. The plaster hid a mosque. What it protected was a district no one could undo without undoing everyone in it. So here's the question this scar presses into the palm of anyone who stops to feel it. A wall like this asks the same thing of anyone who leans on it. Hide the thing you love long enough to make it too large to bury. The seam already answered, in stone. This is faith in practice, where belief becomes daily life.